Welcome in, everybody, to Sports and Money, combined with Simon Short podcast, combined with Phantom Sports. We are here once again with Simon Short. I am Benjamin Parker. We are covering the offensive lines. We are grading every offensive line in the NFL. We're going through first division by division. Then we'll go back through at the end of all these videos. And we'll have an entire league-wide rankings of all the offensive lines. But tonight we're covering the NFC North. Simon, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, Ben. I'm good. Happy 2 days, one day after the 4th. I don't know anymore. Today it's July 5th, I guess, when we're doing this. But hope everybody had a happy and safe 4th and enjoyed themselves. And now we're here for the real holiday, the real fireworks, talking offensive line. So let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to everybody else out there in the audience, hope you had a great 4th. I know for some of you, not all of you, some of you, the turn of July 4th, and then boom, it's like training camp, and then the season's right on top of us for some of you. So, not only is the 4th a big momentum in its own right, it also leads to a lot of football things right after that. So, all right, the NFC North tonight. We're going to start off with the Packers first. Simon, go ahead and give us what you think might be the starting top 5 for Green Bay.
So there is going to be a battle at tackle somewhere. It's going to be a little dependent on Bakhtiari's health. But left to right, the way I have it, the way I think they'd like to see it, is David Bakhtiari, John Runyon, Josh Myers, Royce Newman, and then Yosh Nijman, who played a lot of left tackle, stepped in a lot for Bakhtiari last year. I think Elton Jenkins is once again going to be in the mix for really any number of positions. He's a guy that can play tackle and guard, but I think they'd rather Nijman start. So we'll just have to see how he holds up at right tackle as long as Bakhtiari is healthy there on the left side.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I had the exact same starting 5 as you, except I had Jenkins plugged in at right tackle. It's interesting, though. We see this for a number of teams where they've got a guy who's good enough to start, but they really have somebody else that they would rather just kind of take hold of that position. And for the Packers, apparently Nijman is the guy. Jenkins has played really good the past couple of seasons for the Packers, but like you mentioned, if Nijman can step up and take over that right tackle role, well, that leaves Jenkins as your depth guy, and you probably can't find a better depth guy in the NFL than that plug Jenkins in.
Yeah, I mean, the guy has played, tackle on both sides. He was a Pro Bowl guard 2 years ago in 2020. If you can have that person as your 6th offensive lineman, I don't know how much tackle eligible the Packers do. I didn't see a ton of it, but if they wanted to throw that out there and have him out there, I think you'd rather just have him at guard. And the way John Runyon and Royce Newman are, I think those guys are locked in. So if you're in a position where Jenkins is playing, you'd really rather see him inside, even though he can get you out of a game at tackle. But if Nijman, can't prove to be an everyday starter, then I think Jenkins, they're going to be happy to put him up there. But it is a projection. I mean, Nijman has started 8 games as a pro NFL player, and Jenkins, quick math, 38. So clearly a lot. I might be selling him a little bit short even. But this is, the way that it kind of shook out and was proven last year. So I think that's what they would like to have happen.
Certainly, it's not unreasonable. And, all in the financial world of the NFL right now, you'd always rather see the younger guy get it because they're going to be cheaper. And you can always let the veteran go and save quite a bit of cap space. That's not fair. You'd really rather have the veteran than the young guy in a lot of cases. But once the finances enter into it, you're like, man, we're looking to cut costs anywhere we can. And Nijman's only going to be in his 3rd year. So, I'm sure the Packers would love to see him grab that. You mentioned David Bakhtiari over at the left tackle spot. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but any update when he's healthy? Obviously, he's one of the best tackles in the game. But how healthy is he at this moment and maybe pushing through this season?
I think, and I'm going to do a quick little search here from everything that we've been told and that we've seen up until now. It's been, oh yeah, he's going to be ready for, somewhere between training camp and week 1. That's going to happen. It's what they said last year too. And that clearly did not, come to fruition. When it comes to offensive linemen and leg injuries, you can just never really be sure. But I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be all right. Based on the fact that he did play towards the end of the season last year. So we should see him back early, if not right there from day one. And with the things that this offense is probably going to be doing differently, I would assume, based on some other position groups, you would like to have your, all pro left tackle there to kind of be there to figure it out.
Let's talk about depth for a second, and then we'll peel back and get the grades here. Either Jenkins, let's assume Bakhtiari is healthy. That leaves either Jenkins or Nyman to win one starting job. The other guy becomes your sixth man, basically, and that's where your depth starts right there with player number 6. After that, there's a lot of question marks in terms of just guys that are unproven, but the bright side is they have a lot of young guys. So you have Sean Ryan, third year, Jake Hansen, third year. Sean Ryan's a rookie, Jake Hansen, third year, Zach Tom, rookie, Cole Van Lannon, second year, Michael Manette, second year, Rasheed Walker and George Moore are both rookies. There's a lot of rookies and second and third year guys here on the bench, so the experience isn't necessarily there, but you would hope to see some improvement. To me, none of those guys stood out once you got past spot number 6. But any of those guys there that you like, that you think could be a legit depth person for the Packers this year?
I think both the young guys, actually. I think both rookies, Sean Ryan and Rasheed Walker, are two guys that I was looking at and paying attention to in the draft. I think with the flexibility they have, and you get a guard, you get a tackle. We've seen this team continue to add depth to the offensive line in young guys. I mean, Elton Jenkins is only even going into his 4th year himself. Josh Myers is in his 2nd or 3rd year. Same with Runyon. Newman's a young guy. Nyman's a young guy. So they like to keep adding these young pieces, and that's something you and I talk about a lot. Just keep adding to the group. Rasheed Walker even is a guy, they didn't get him until late day 3, right? The 7th round, I believe. So
right,
that's exactly a guy that I thought was going to go 3rd round or 4th round. And they managed to get him all the way down at the end of the 7th round. So I think just seeing the investment that they put into it, it's a little like I make you do this every time. I'm sorry, but it's a little like the San Antonio Spurs, even though it's not going so well right now. But anytime they draft somebody, you just think, that's probably a good player. It's probably the same way, it's the same way with the Patriots. It's the same way with, I don't know, insert other name of franchise you want to. But they keep getting offensive linemen and they keep turning out to be pretty good. You look at these names and they're not the biggest names on the offensive line, but they just keep bringing them in and they keep churning out good players. They have a good run game all the time. And the NFC North, a little like the AFC North, you need those big bodies to really run and get going on the ground, especially in the cold. If they take an offensive lineman anywhere in the draft, I feel pretty good about them. Rasheed Walker's a name I definitely knew, so I like. Sean Ryan, same thing. So I think both those guys, if Bakhtiari is hurt, if another one of these guys goes down, it wouldn't surprise me if either of those two just kind of walked in and was a solid offensive lineman from day one.
I'll do a quick plug here for the Simon Short podcast. I was listening to you talk to Marcus Applin, who covers the Browns for Phantom Sports earlier in the week. And you guys were talking about that, how you could always draft more offensive linemen. It's amazing how many teams don't. They'll let 2, 3, even 4 seasons go and barely draft even one offensive lineman, and that might be a 5th rounder. It's kind of astounding to see that when you step back and look at it. But the Packers here are kind of doing what the Patriots do, and that is continually drafting 1 or 2 guys a year. And, it allows you, when you're good at developing these guys, and when you're good at kind of picking out these guys, it allows you to let the veterans go and save anywhere from $5 to $15 million on these guys, because as much as you'd like to have the veterans, they're expendable. You can learn to play without them if you've done a good job investing in their replacements. And the Packers are doing a good job of that. Patriots have done that for a very long time as well. So it's interesting you mentioned that. We'll keep an eye on Sean Ryan and Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker going through. What's your grade on the Packers for this year, all things considered, as we head into the season?
I'm gonna do a little thinking on the fly here and give myself some time to think about this again, because I do want to add in something I forgot about. Actually, Elton Jenkins tore his ACL towards the end of last year. I knew there was a reason that I had Nyman in year over him. So he'll be hoping to come back for a spot. He tore it late in November, so obviously he won't be ready for the start of the season. And then things have a funny way of working themselves out. So we'll see if a spot opens up around the time that he's back healthy. all that to say, like I said, I was using that to configure my final grade. There are a lot of question marks with this group. I like the interior better than the tackles right now, just because Bakhtiari, I need to see him play a few weeks in a row and feel confident in it before I think, oh yeah, that just pencil him back in as your all-pro left tackle. Nyman, we have to see on the right side. We haven't really seen it yet. We have to see him be a full-time starter. But the interior group is so strong, and the depth is good, and I really like the depth. And then you add Jenkins when he comes back. I'm gonna go B plus here. I'm gonna go B plus with Green Bay. I didn't think I would. You look at the guys and you evaluate each guy individually, and they're all just pretty good. But I think the group together, even though I'm a little nervous about Bakhtiari, I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be really good still. And then I'm factoring in giving them points for that depth as well. So I'm going to go with a B plus for Green Bay, and that might be a little high. So I figure you'll let me know if I'm doing that.
No surprise, I'm going to come in lower because except for two teams, I always do. Now, honestly, the gap here is a little bit wider than what we usually come up with, and I'll probably explain why I'm coming up with different. I'm in the C minus category at the moment. Now, I will put in a big caveat. There's so many young guys here, and the Packers do a good job of developing. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they got pushing up in the B category, especially by the end of the season. So credit there. But there's two things holding me back here, three things actually. You mentioned the injuries with Jenkins and Bakhtiari, and I forgot about the Jenkins injury, so good job putting that in. Could they both come back healthy? Yes, but it's something that may drag the grade down a little bit. Me personally, I'm high on John Runyon, but I'm not as high on Myers and Newman at the moment. I think they have promise. I think they have shown some promise, but I don't think they're very consistent. So probably better in the running game than they are in pass protection for me personally. And then what's also dragging the grade down is, while I think there are lots of guys on the bench who can grow up and develop very quickly, I think they still haven't done it yet. So for all of those reasons, it's not that I don't think this can't be a good offensive line. I think it can be, but just at this precise moment, heading into the season, I'm going to probably sit them around a C for total grade here. But certainly I think they can be a lot better than that by the end of the year. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Any final thoughts on the Packers?
I think our swing piece here in you with our grades is our feelings on Josh Myers. I'm a big Josh Myers guy. He elevates that interior group to me. But I can see what you're saying with the inconsistency, and I think that's the piece that is making it such a big sway. So that'll be really interesting to see this year for sure.
I'm going to stop the train here, man. We've got to do it. Funny story.
Love it.
For those of you in the audience, we apologize. We just do this, and since we're not getting huge numbers on the offensive line videos anyway, we'll just go ahead and do it when we want to anyway. All right. When I was covering the Chiefs last offseason, a lot of the Chiefs fans weren't in favor of drafting a center. I did a couple of videos on why they definitely should. Of course, they ended up doing it. I had recommended Josh Myers, but I hadn't done a lot of tape work on him. I just liked him. They turned around and drafted Creed Humphrey. Humphrey has just an amazing season for the Chiefs, and Myers struggles for the Packers a little bit with consistency. So I'm right there with you on Myers, except that he just didn't look as good this year as Humphrey did. But I agree. I like the fact that they drafted Josh Myers. Maybe, again, if you fast forward a season, maybe I think that they'll be even better. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just a little bullish, I guess is the right word, on maybe this season for these guys. So, but I think you're right on Myers. Totally right. All right, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Go ahead and trot out your top five from Minnesota.
All right. So for Minnesota, I've got from left to right, this one I think is going to be pretty easy. I've got Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Jesse Davis, and Brian O'Neill. I don't see any big competitions really to this point. We'll see if a training camp darling kind of pops up out of nowhere, but I feel pretty confident in those five. Jesse Davis came over from Houston, and is, I think, going to fill in that right guard spot, and everything else should be carryover from last year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually very much like Christian Darrisaw, but sometimes it takes a year or two for offensive linemen to really find their footing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've even seen. I think we've even seen offensive linemen take as much as 3 or 4 years to really get
Mm-hmm.
to their full selves. Um, do you like Darisaw in the long run? Do you think he's the like? You think he is one of the big guys in the league moving forward?
I love Darisaw. I'm a huge fan. Of course, last year in the draft, he goes 23. Najee Harris was taken by the Steelers at 24. And the writing was on the wall for Najee the whole way, but I was like, man, if Christian Darrisaw can fall all the way to 24, I mean, how do you not take him? So I love him. I think exactly like you said, you watch him on film. I put him at about a C plus for his grade, just grading on last year. I think if you project up a little bit, it's probably going to be more like a B for him this year. But you watch him and everything's there. All the tools are there. I mean, his feet are really good, which is good because they play that zone run scheme. He gets out in space really well. He uses his feet well in his kick step. He gets into space, whether it's vertically or horizontally on screens or outside runs or just going forward. The big thing I want to see from him this year is to improve his punch, use his hands a little bit better, to help set his anchor a little bit better in pass pro. Right now, he's kind of a lighter tackle. I mean, right here, I mean, this just one site has him listed at 315, which is light, which helps him with that athleticism, obviously, but doesn't give him a naturally great base, a naturally great anchor. So I'd like to see him use his athleticism a little bit more, get a good punch out, and that way he can set a little bit better in pass pro. But I think he's got all the tools. I think if he can do that, we could see a huge jump from him just this year.
I agree. I like the starting five for the Vikings. I don't yet love it, but they have, in my opinion, at least at the two tackle spots, they have everything set. Brian O'Neill
Mm-hmm.
is a good, solid tackle. Christian Darrisaw looks like in the future he could be one of the better tackles in the league. So you're set at tackle. That brings you to Garrett Bradbury at center, drafted I think 2 or 3 seasons ago. He hasn't been horrible, but he certainly hasn't been what the Vikings were hoping for when they drafted him. Um, is it? What do you think about guys like that who the potential's there, the talent's there, but it's just so inconsistent? Any hope here for Bradbury as he's in year 3 now? I think.
I don't. This is hard to say, but I don't think so. I mean, I think when you've been in there 3 years, especially with these zone run schemes, I think if you're a player who's supposed to fit in that, you're drafted for that reason. I mean, that's why they took him. They took him in the first round, 18th overall in 2019, because
Yeah.
he is a smaller, more athletic center that can run the zone blocking scheme. And he just hasn't been as good as you want. Obviously, he's on the smaller side, so his anchor isn't great in pass pro. Um, he's a good athlete, and you could see that on film. But you would expect to see him make more plays, especially in the second level, than he does. And I think now just going into his 4th year, and again, when you're supposed to just kind of be ready made when it's that kind of scheme and that kind of football, and that's what you do. Uh, I'm not too high on him. I'm with you. Do I think he's horrible? No. At best, though, I think he's just average. And again, if you're going to take an average offensive lineman, is a different scale than other positions, right? An average NFL wide receiver is a pretty darn good wide receiver. An average NFL offensive lineman, while it's, yeah, average, so, you're going to have the same number of better and the same number of worse, it's not a very good player because there's so few good offensive linemen compared to wide receivers or edge rushers or anything else. So you definitely are going to want to do more. I don't know where he's at. If they picked up his 5th year option, I don't think they did. I'm going to look
I
at
would be
that here
I would
in
be
a
shocked if
moment.
they did because you're right. He's in his 4th. He's about to start his 4th season, and he hasn't been anywhere near what they hoped he would. I would be shocked if they had picked that up. To be
Yeah, no,
honest.
they did decline it. So I mean, I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know. I'm with you. I like the tackles. I like the guards fine, but that center position is going to be their weak point. And I'm not seeing it with him. So I think this will be his last year. I think they'll let him run it again. Um, and it might coincide with a little Christian Kirk, oh my gosh, a little Kirk Cousins change of the guard as well. We're seeing these quarterbacks and centers tend to come and go at the same time. So maybe, that's something for next year, obviously.
And it's not like the Vikings haven't. invested draft picks here in the offensive line. They
Hmm.
have, with starting with Bradbury. We mentioned Darrisaw. Now they've Wyatt Davis, who's been a disappointment from last year. I think he was drafted in the third round in 2021. Um, I don't think he's going to get cut, but there have been a couple of articles and rumors out there that he might be getting cut, which would be kind of shocking. Um, but they have invested a pick there. They've invested picks with Ed Ingram. And then Badarian Lowe, who's a rookie as well from the sixth round. They've been investing draft picks, but I haven't really seen the development here of some of these players the way you would like to. Anything there? Anything at all that maybe the Vikings need to kind of step up on the development of these players a little bit?
I mean, yes, you'd like to see some of those guys that have been drafted a little bit higher pan out. I do think there are the other starters though, right? So I think Jesse Davis is coming in at right guard. He comes from the outside. He comes from Miami. I think he'll be okay. But Brian O'Neill was a second round pick for them back in 2018. He's good. He's solid. Ezra Cleveland was a second round pick in 2020. He's been pretty solid. So I think again that this is where that investment comes from. You have no time in the past up until 2022 here. This 4 years seems so short when it comes to a sports contract, and that's any sport. So you can either draft guys and develop and hope for the best, or just keep taking more bites at the apple. And when you have, for the NFL, it's 7 rounds. In theory, you have 7 picks every year. Just keep going, man. Just keep going. Get the same, attack every position group, do it over and over again, have a 2-year cycle where you're just bringing guys in and trying to increase that talent. And then if you, let's say every other year, right? Let's say every other year you're taking each position, you're hoping either by year 3 someone has clicked or you have a rookie in place. And I think that's what these teams are doing. It's a theme that we keep coming back to, which has been interesting in these videos for us. So while they definitely have some misses, I think they have just as many quote unquote hits that are going pretty well for them.
It's a fair point, and they've probably invested more draft picks in the offensive line than probably maybe all but 1 or 2 teams in the NFL over the past, say, 4 or 5 seasons. They have really worked at it. So that brings us to a grade. Where are you going to grade the Vikings offensive line for this season, as it sits right now, or as you think it will be by, say, the middle of the season?
Yeah, I'm still gonna be a little low on them. I'm probably gonna have them at about a C plus at best. Just because I think even though I have Bradbury as a C minus or a C grade, but I think the other guys around him are solid enough. It'll be interesting to see how Jesse Davis does. I'm not sure what his zone capabilities are going to be, his movement abilities. I watched him more at tackle last year for the Dolphins, so he's kind of moving inside, which should mitigate it some. But I like that left side. I like Darrisaw and I like Cleveland next to each other. And like I said, I think Darrisaw is going to be better. I think O'Neill is good, solid. Bradbury, again, they at least know what they're getting in him, right? They know what's going to happen. So I think go get Davis to play next to him, maybe mitigate some of those issues. He's a bigger, more physical guy, plays really well like in a phone booth. So he's always kind of looking around, seeing where he can help, basically. Very physical guy, always looking to make contact. So I think that mitigates some of the Bradbury issues. Even as I'm talking, I realize I'm trying to talk myself into C plus, so I'm even going to bump him down to a C. I just think it's going to be an average offensive line, unless Darrisaw just kind of takes off to like an elite version of himself this year and raises the profile a bit. But I'm going to go down to a C and just say this is going to be an average offensive line this year because I'm just really not high on Bradbury.
If you're at a C, I'm right there with you. That's the grade I have. I don't think they're going to be a bad offensive line, but unless 2 or 3 of these guys show some significant growth right at the start of the season, I don't see much of a difference making offensive line here either. Love the youth, love the fact that they put the draft picks in. Just haven't seen enough development from everybody, but there's promise there. Certainly Ezra Cleveland, certainly Christian Darrisaw, certainly Brian O'Neill. You already mentioned O'Neill's solid as a rock. So, there's no way this is going to be a bad offensive line unless there's injuries. But is it going to be somewhere competing with the top guys? It does not look like it. It almost seems like the Vikings are competing with the Cowboys for some of the most mediocrity in the NFL. It's like they're never horrible, but they're never good either. He just keeps hitting back on mediocrity all the time.
I think this will go back to another series that you're doing, but I think that a lot of that will come to quarterback play, and be sure to stay on this YouTube page and take a look at those videos that Ben's doing, because I think we'll get a lot of those answers there.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff at quarterback too over at Phantom Sports, Sports and Money. We're all over the place. So, all right, so that's the Vikings. Let's talk about the Lions now. And the Lions have not been a pleasant thing to talk about for years, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a hint as to my grade. I actually like some things the Lions have going on here. So go ahead and give us the starting five, and we'll dive right into it.
Ben, I love the Lions offensive line, man. I mean, don't watch anything else, right? Don't see where the ball is being thrown or how it's being thrown or what they do. No, just watch the offensive line. You'll enjoy the game much, much better. Left to right should be pretty easy. It's going to be Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Halapuivati, Vatai. How do you think I did on that?
I'll give you a 7, man. That's pretty smooth.
All right, I'll take a 7. And then Penei Sewell. So obviously a big name there. Good investment in this group, and just a really strong group overall. I think I had texted you when we were watching film for these guys, and I just come off of watching, might have been Vikings and Bears, and just watching that and being a slog from an offensive line grading standpoint. And then I turn on Packers lines, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. This is like you're a kid and you just had to finish your vegetables, but then you got ice cream after, and it's just like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is so great.
Totally agree. I'm gonna sit on their starting five for just a second. Love Taylor Decker at left tackle. Is he the best left tackle in the game? No, he's not. But he's really consistent and he's really good. All right. So and that goes for not just in run blocking, but in pass protection too. He's very good at both of those things. You move over to the other side with Penei Sewell at right tackle. Sewell's not quite as good as Decker, but Sewell's solid as a rock. You're not looking to upgrade that position either. So your tackle spots are taken care of. Jonah Jackson hasn't been as good as maybe they hoped, but he's very good at run blocking. It's the pass blocking that he still kind of needs some work on, but it's okay. He's playing next to Taylor Decker, and he's in between Ragnow over at center. And Ragnow is one of the better centers in the game. Now, there's probably 2 or 3 guys who are better than Ragnow, but Ragnow is a Pro Bowl kind of a player. I don't know if he's actually made the Pro Bowl or not. I haven't checked, but he's a Pro Bowl level kind of a player at center. And then that brings you to Vaitai at guard, and Vaitai is solid. Maybe not as consistent as you would like, but good, solid, working offensive lineman. There's not a position here that you're like, man, we got to upgrade this spot. There's not one. You've got 2 guys who I think are above average with Ragnow and Decker, and then you've got 2 more guys in Vaitai and Sewell who are just good, solid starters. And then even Jonah Jackson fits in fine in the running game. He just needs a little bit of help in pass protection. So I really like the starting 5 here. And you don't see that very often. There's very few teams where you're like all 5 guys are, okay or above average. So I really like the starting 5 here. Brings us to the depth. Logan Stenberg is a guy who, really him and Jonah Jackson have kind of fought over who's going to start at guard, and Jackson's been really the obvious choice. I'm not sure that Stenberg couldn't be a good starting guard. He just really hasn't been needed yet, to be honest. So, but I think he provides okay depth. Evan Brown, I think, can move around center and guard kind of stuff. He's probably not a guy you want as a starter, but he's a good backup, very good backup. After that, it kind of falls off. You got several rookies there. So to me, they go about 7 deep here. How do you view their depth as far as the Lions go?
So one guy who we didn't mention depth-wise because he ended up starting a lot of games last year was Matt Nelson at tackle. He started in place of Taylor Decker a lot when Decker was out injured, and then he even moved around a little bit. That's a guy that I really like. He busted up the Steelers in their game and in that famous or infamous tie game with Mason Rudolph. But by coming in at tackle eligible, he's a big guy, 6'7", just can really push down the line and really get some good movement in the run game. And, started, like I said, a handful, I think 11 games last year. Yeah, started 11 games for them. Just a guy that you can plug in the starting lineup or utilize as a 6th offensive lineman, which I like. I'm with you. After that, it gets a little shaky, so you don't want to take too many injuries. But I think based on the way this team plays and the way some of these guys can move around, I mean, Sewell can kick in the guard a little bit. So if you need to do something interior wise, maybe instead of going with, one of the backups, you go with Nelson to take right tackle and push Sewell inside. So that could be interesting. But yeah, not a ton of depth. I would like it to be a little bit better, but Matt Nelson's a good tackle, and yeah, going from there, not quite as good.
We can talk about the Lions a lot here with the offensive line, but I think we've already said a lot of great stuff about them. So I kind of hate to add anything. Probably anything else we say would just be negative, and I don't want to do that to the Lions anymore. So let's talk about
let them
grades.
have this offensive line. They're great.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Let them have this. They've so anyway, where do you come out grade wise on the Lions?
I got him at an A-, even though, like I said, the depth I don't love. I think this starting group is just, as a unit, right on par with everyone else that you could really put in the league, except for maybe a couple teams above them. But I think on an individual basis, everybody is good, I would say, not just above average, but I think every single player is good on this offensive line. They've all played together for the better part of at least a year now. I think Ragnar, like you said, one of the best centers. I think Decker, maybe not an elite tackle, but one of the better tackles in the league. I think Sewell is on his way there. I think just top end and the way these guys play together, and again, the way they play, I got them at an A-.
I'm somewhere around a B minus. Of course, I skew lower, which is fine. I'm not as big on Matt Nelson, so maybe I'm not giving Matt Nelson enough credit. That's one big difference in the grade. I'm also waiting to see Jonah Jackson. I actually really do think Jonah Jackson can be just a lockdown starter in this league, but he hasn't done it yet. I'm still waiting to see him step up in pass protection. And when he does, yeah, I think this could be an A level starting top 5 here. But the depth isn't great. There's a couple of guys there. Still waiting to see kind of what Logan Stenberg can be. So I'm somewhere around a B minus. But man, I really like the offensive line. I like the starting 5 here. And yeah, I think it's going to be good for the Lions. It might be the bright spot for Detroit this year, but they got some other pieces too. We'll see.
Yeah, TBD on the other stuff, but offensive line, Detroit, right. Keep it up. It's great.
All right. I hate to do this. Here comes the negative part of the program. And if you're a Bears fan, I hate to tell any of our viewers to turn off the show, but if you're a Bears fan, you probably want to turn off the show, okay?
Because this might be therapy. They might need to hear someone else say it other than just them.
It might be. The Bears had last year one of the worst offensive lines in football, if not the worst. I think it was the worst. And I think you and I are going to come out in the same place. I think it's going to be the worst offensive line of football this year, maybe by a long shot. If you can pick out a starting 5, go ahead and tell us who you think the starting 5 will be.
Oh man. So here's what I got. Here's what I think they're hoping happens, which is not a great place. I think they want Tevin Jenkins to play left tackle. He was their draft pick last year, played some right tackle last season. I think they want him to be their left tackle. So from left to right. Then you got Sam Mustipher, who was the center last year, and I might have him in white hair flipped at guard. So sorry, Bears fans, if the other's the left guard, I apologize. But Sam Mustipher, I think, was the center. Struggled at center, but he's a big guy. You watch and you're surprised that's the center because again, we talked about Bradbury. Smaller center is usually what you see, even in a power run scheme. So I think they're hoping to move him over to guard and make that a little more of a natural fit for him. Lucas Patrick is a guy that they got from the Green Bay Packers, who has played guard and center. That apparently is going to be their center. That's the adult they want to bring into the room essentially. Cody Whitehair is going to be the other guard. He had played center for the Bears a couple of years ago, I believe, and they moved him over to guard. And then Larry Borum is a guy that kind of came on the scene last year. So if you want to talk about something that might have been a bright spot, he kind of came in during the year last year and really impressed some people, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the offensive line. Still not a very good offensive lineman, but came in and was kind of a nice breath of fresh air. So left to right, again, the guards might be flipped, but Tevin Jenkins, Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick, Sam Mustipher, and Larry Borum.
I agree. That's the exact starting 5 that I have. Although you mentioned two or three of those guys could swap around there, but that's
Mhm.
the starting five, no matter where they start at. I think that's what's going to happen. Um, it's the worst starting five in football. There's the best player. I'm going to say the best player is Cody White here. Who's your best player on this offensive line?
This is how bad it is because I have him as the worst player. Um,
Okay,
but again, we're splitting hairs. We're talking like a 3 out of 10 to 5 out of 10 kind of deal. But that's super interesting. Ever the optimist, I'm gonna project and say I think Jenkins is going to be the best player this year.
okay.
I think he's the most talented player. I think, although on the other hand, you're asking a lot for this guy to be your left tackle and to lock that down. So that makes me really nervous. I think Borum is honestly the most rock solid. You know what you're getting, and you at least can go about your day, right? But you don't want him to be your best offensive lineman. So I think it's going to end up being one of the tackles. I think they want it to be Lucas Patrick coming in at center, being the vet coming from Green Bay. Um, but I just don't think he's gonna. I think he's one of those that he looks really good when he's your fourth best offensive lineman. If you walk in and you need him to be your top guy, it's gonna go really poorly. I threw out all the rest of the names out there to you and don't feel good about any of them. So you could tell me Whitehair is going to be the best guy. And again, I think maybe 2 years ago, right? If we had asked this question going into last season, he would have been the easy answer because he was pretty good. But last year just was not a good year for him, and we'll see what they do with him this year. But again, Lucas Patrick coming in, I don't think Whitehair's going to center. Um, it's rough, man. It's rough out here if
It
you're a
really
Bears fan.
is. And we're not trying to rip the Bears. I would love to see the Bears win some games. I would love to see Justin Fields have some success. But for comparison's sake, just to give you a feel for how bad this offensive line projects to be, I think there are half the teams in the NFL. We've already covered most of them. I think there are half of the teams in the NFL who wouldn't start a single one of these Bears offensive linemen. And I think there's probably another, I don't know, 8 teams who would only start one of them. That's how on the end of the spectrum this Bears offensive line is. When it comes to depth, you have some guys who maybe are almost as good as the starters, not quite. I mean, Dakota Dozier isn't a horrible backup. Julian Davenport isn't a horrible backup. You've got some fifth and sixth round draft picks mixed in here with Lachavious Simmons and Braxton Jones and Zach Thomas, or not Simmons, but Doug Kramer, Jatire Carter. They used a lot of low draft picks this year on offensive linemen. Um, they haven't done a good job developing. They haven't done a good job of drafting. They haven't used a whole lot of draft picks on the offensive line. They used a couple. It just hasn't been good at all here for Chicago on any front. Not the development, not the drafting, not the investment. I mean, nothing. And it shows up here for the Bears. So, I hate it for Justin Fields. I think he deserves better than this. But that's why they have a new front office, and we'll see what they do moving forward.
They have a new front office, but their GM is a former offensive lineman who didn't do anything about this offensive line until day 3 of the draft. I think that's the most frustrating thing. I mean, these guys were getting a tackle off of a fishing boat last year in the late summer, and it did not go well. And then you come into the offseason this year and you don't address the offensive line. You hardly address wide receiver, and which is a whole different topic that I don't need to get into right now. But yeah, I'm shocked. I'm fully surprised. Like you said, that would be a fun little side project at the end of this if we tried to see how many of these guys would start on a different roster somewhere. I mean, even Patrick was, he started a handful of games last year, but it was mostly, kind of rotating in through injuries. So it's really hard to even tell who was the quote unquote day one starter, right, and who wasn't. So yeah, I mean it's pretty gross. It's I do think I'm trying to look up past the recent drafts, right? So in 2020, let's see, what did they do? Nothing until day 3. Obviously, we mentioned in 2021, Tevin Jenkins, they took in the second round. Larry Borum was their 5th-round pick that year. So I guess they did that draft and they were like, all right, we're good on offensive line. We got 2 tackles and we're done here. 2019, they had 5 picks. They didn't take a single offensive lineman. 2018, they had 7 picks. Yeah, they had 7 picks. Did not take an offensive lineman. 2017, that's the Mitch Trubisky draft. They had 5 picks. They took a guard who's not on the team anymore, Jordan Morgan, in the 5th round. So yeah, this is the difference, is what we're talking about. You got to make these draft investments to really help this offensive line group, I think, more than any other position. And these are the fruits of the labor where if you don't do that, it's going to sneak up on you really quick when players leave. I mean, this team had 1 good offensive lineman last year in James Daniels, and he left in free agency. So yeah, this is going to be a rough group, and I'm with you. I want Justin Fields to succeed probably more than almost any quarterback in the league. And they're not helping him here, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I had actually forgot that in 21 they drafted Jenkins in the 2nd round and Borum in the 5th round. They're trying them both, but one has looked good. I don't like to rip people apart, but you can tell what the Lions are doing. They have a direction. They have a little bit of hope. It's not there yet, but you see what they're doing. The Vikings have a lot of mediocrity going on, but at least they're consistent. The Bears, you look at what was the game plan? Not just with the offensive line, but with everything. Basically it felt like you built the defense and then you drafted a young quarterback, and you had one good season, and that was kind of it about 3 or 4 years ago when Khalil Mack first came over, and then that really didn't pan out because all your draft picks were gone at that point, or your high draft picks. Oh well, interesting to watch. We're not going to try to keep hammering the Bears, but that's kind of what we got moving forward. Real quick, final. What's your grade on the Bears?
I mean, I can't even use my like Jenkins optimism really here, because again, I think moving him to left tackle is going to be rough. Now, I think some people think that Borum's going to end up being the left tackle. I think either way, it's going to be rough. I have an F right now until proven otherwise. I mean, this is bottom of the barrel. This is as bad as it gets. Could I be proven wrong? Sure. Would I like it? Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, none of these guys, especially last year, like I said, Whitehair has had good years in the past. Same, Patrick, I think 2 years ago was pretty decent. But none of these guys are giving me any confidence this year. So I got them as an F, and I think you're going to have a hard time giving them a lower grade.
I'm going to try, but I'm not going to succeed. Yeah, an F is what I've got. I think it's the only F, the only true F I handed out this year. I forget, the Seahawks were somewhere in the D and F category. I don't remember exactly what I gave them, but yeah, at least the Seahawks have some hope. The Seahawks have some talent. I don't yet see that the Bears have that. So, to be determined, as you already said. All right, anything else on the Bears or the NFC North?
No, that was it. I mean, you have 2 very good groups, 2 very bad groups, which is very interesting within one division. So we'll see how some of these young guys perform here this year, and hopefully can re-rank some of these guys for next offseason.
Yep, and we'll hopefully do this again next offseason, and hopefully have better news than this on the Bears.
And we just ended on such a bummer.
With that, thank you so much for watching. We're doing all the offensive lines. We'll go back through and do some more offensive line videos that kind of wrap up everything we're doing on the divisions. That is Simon Shore. I am Benjamin Parker. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. Bye.